And secondly, how can they help to provide stable prices? I heard just within the last few days, one of the regional Federal Reserve presidents say, well, we're focused on unemployment. Yeah, the Congress made a mistake back several years ago by adding a third charter dealing with unemployment. That's not the Fed's job. The Fed is to promote economic growth and to provide stable prices. Irresponsible fiscal policy makes that very difficult, but the Fed cannot deal with employment beyond promoting economic growth, because employment has more to do with education, immigration, technology, and other things that the Fed has absolutely nothing to do with. So, the president should not be telling the Fed what to do, but the president and Congress should work together to revise the Fed's mission, okay, to focus on pro-economic growth and stable prices over time. The other thing is that the Fed also charter has to be revised to provide extreme limits on their ability to self-deal in our own debt. They basically ended up buying trillions of dollars of debt without having to go to the market. They shouldn't be able to do that. That's self-dealing. We shouldn't be doing that. That's short-term gain, long-term pain. And that's the whole path that we're on right now. We're on short-term gain, long-term pain. Debt going up, savings going down. Bill, you know this. That's the opposite of what you need for a better future.
Yeah. We'll bring in the millionaire next door and see what he has to say about this increasing debt problem.
Yeah, no, David, I think you're right on target. We're on a path of no return here. Maybe these are the end times. I don't want to be draconian, but what culture has survived on this path in the past? When you look at the demise of, like Victor Davis Hanson's historical perspectives about the rise and falls of cultures, economics plays a very large part of it. And so why are we going to be any different? I mean, I hate to say that these are the end times, but what are we going to do to reverse it? Is there there's too much inertia in the system right now. Can it be reversed?
Well, Bill, let me just come back on that real quick. As you know, my latest book is America in 2040, Still a Superpower ?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes the point you're talking on is that if you look at history, the number one factor to become a superpower is economic power.
Yes.
That is the leading indicator. And the leading indicator to lose superpower status is economic decline.
Uh-huh.
And if you can't put your finances in order, you will have economic decline, which will have a serious adverse effect. And let me remind you of what happened to the Roman Empire, which lasted 1,000 years, only half of it as a republic and the last half as an autocracy. It fell for several reasons. See if these sound familiar. Fiscal irresponsibility, political instability, moral decline, overextended military, and inability to control its borders. Do those sound familiar?
Yeah, indeed they do.
We need to learn from history. We need to learn from others, and we need to wake up, change course if we want our future to be better than our past. It's not too late, but we're late in the ball game.
Okay. We'll bring in Rick Rosner, see if the High IQ Society can find our way out of this.
We don't necessarily have to completely disappear like the Roman Empire, but we could easily go from being the greatest nation to being a great-ish nation. You look at Italy, you look at England, you look at Spain and Greece and all these countries that at one time ruled the world. Now they don't, and they're all pretty nice countries. Italy's great, but they're not important countries so much anymore. And it would be a shame if the U.S. fell to even, second-tier status.
Yeah, but it looks like we're moving that direction. Let's go to the Financial Advocate podcast, David Kinder, see what you have to say out on the streets. What do people have to say about this issue when you bring that up to your clients?
Here's the thing. People are very much concerned, and they want to know, what are we going to do to fix this thing? And I've got a really good friend, and he's in Dubai. The neat thing about Dubai is they have their own national product, and they have absolutely zero taxes at all at any level whatsoever. Now, can we as a country get enough of the right kinds of people? And when I had Tom Hegna on, he said we need better statesmen in Congress that have a greater impact and greater ideas. We need kind of an Elon Musk type of a person who could bring in this higher level of thinking that can help bring about some new imagination to our fiscal problems. I don't know who that's going to be. I don't know what that's going to look like. I just know that there needs to be a solution. The question that I help my clients with, see, I do not have a fiduciary responsibility to the federal government other than anti-money laundering and things like that. I got to follow the laws. But other than that, my job is to help protect the client. How can I protect the client from losing their life savings, life's work, and everything that they can because of other people, and that they're not held to a fiduciary responsibility of how they propose their spending? How can I be? I've got to be better than the government is. I have to advise better than the government is doing in how they're spending. I've got to do better for the client. And so that's my whole goal. You see, my tagline is the tax exempt wealth guide. Let me show people how to retire without even having to file a tax return, using the tax code and the IRS's own rules. That's what I love to talk about.
Yeah, I had a quick question for David, the financial planning guy and everything, because I've seen a number, I'm here in Durham, North Carolina, I've seen a number of restaurants that are running into problems, and it's kind of based on what Rick was talking about, because a lot of people have gone to remote work, so they are not having as many people that are coming down to their restaurants and everything, so they are facing a severe problem because they're not having the clientele come in there. And with gentrification, there's also been a lot of growth, and then there becomes a whole traffic issue and that whole thing that can also hinder business as well. So as a financial planner and one that probably plans even for some businesses, I was wondering your advice to folks that are in that crisis, because I did see one of the gentlemen wrote that it's like 80% of American businesses are having cash flow projects, and some of the cash flow problems, and some of those are beyond their control. So I was just wondering your take on that.
Well, I have personal experience with that because my father ran during 2020, and actually up through it was the first job I was fired from at the age of 13. But he ran the Orange County Courthouse cafeteria in Santa Ana, California. Right. And here's the thing: when the courthouses began to reopen again, everything shut down and everything was closed for like 6 weeks or whatever. When everything reopened, here's the thing: it used to be everybody shows up for jury duty like at 7:30 in the morning in the courthouse, and you got like 600 people waiting in that room. Well, they started staggering the people showing up. So you'd have 200 people, and then they have them at different times, which actually declined the foot traffic because people would eat on the way. And so that business really took a hit. Now, unfortunately, most other businesses, what they were able to do is they created their apps. They got into the food delivery services. I can't think of them all right now, but Uber Eats and things like that. Ain't nobody going to order no cafeteria food from the courthouse cafeteria to have it delivered to you. I'm sorry, that is not a palatable message. Right. So my dad tried what he could to try to bring up business. After about another 6 weeks or so, he said, "That's it, we're done." So he retired a year and a half before he planned to. He was 68 years old. He wanted to retire when he was 70 to maximize his Social Security. Restaurants and such, especially restaurants, we have to think outside of the traditional box. You've got to embrace those food delivery services. You got to have a great idea to bring that out. And one of my favorite shows is, Restaurant Impossible, Kitchen Nightmares, and things like that. You've got to get into a higher level of thinking and creativity. You can't keep doing things the way you were doing in the past. So whatever that looks like, and every business needs to do that. Every business has to fight for relevancy, because everything changes all the time. And if you're not fighting for relevancy, everybody else is. And if you're not, your days may be numbered.
So one thing technology doesn't necessarily destroy jobs as much as it replaces good jobs with crappy jobs. Uber driver, OnlyFans naked lady models. We have 1.1 million private pornographers on OnlyFans. That's technology. So it's a tough thing. The Uber driver is not a good job when you do the math, when you figure out the cost of gas and maintenance. And So, and yeah, restaurants, when they have to depend on food delivery people, it changes their business, and not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah.
A couple of things real quick. One, the government is having a very difficult time getting people to come back to work downtown. So it reinforces the fact that a lot of restaurants and shops and everything else are having difficulty. Secondly, I ran GAO, as you know, for 10 years, and GAO had its own cafeteria, and that cafeteria closed as a result of COVID, and has not come back, since COVID, if you will. So, these are real world issues that people are having to deal with. And downtown Class A building space is never going to be what it was before. You're having all these conversions of Class A business, office space into condos or apartments or whatever else, because, we're not going to go back to the pre-COVID situation with regard to work. I mean, you're going to have a lot more people. They're going to be, working some in their offices, but working remotely to a great extent. My personal view is that people ought to be able to have to work in person 3 days a week. Let them work at home a couple of days a week, but you lose a lot when you're not physically in front of somebody. And with all due respect to Zoom and StreamYard or whatever else, this is great when you're talking about people all over the country, all over the world. But when you're talking about people that are in the same geographic area, there's a lot that's lost when you're not there in person, with regard to the emotional intelligence and meaningful interaction, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go to Canada with Sasha Starr from Canada.
Hi, I would like to question all of you about how relevant is this U.S. debt of $35 trillion to the election issue. Most people who will vote, they either don't care, don't know, or don't understand, or all three of that about national debt, and they don't give a damn about it. Now, those people who do understand, and those tiny minorities, let's think about something. Let's see one of the party which will win election, they will be able to decrease national debt from 35 trillion to 30 trillion. So there will be less payments to service the debt. How average American will benefit from that? None, zero, zilch. This is absolutely loser on as election is concerned. As discussions, fine. If you enjoy the discussion, please yourself. Be my guest.
Well, let's talk about what has to be done for people to care about it. Okay. I think what has to be done for people to care about it is for people to understand how it might affect their own life. And let's talk about what's happened in the last couple of years. In the last couple of years, we've had a last 3 years, significant increase in prices, in particular with regard to food, shelter, energy, insurance. And everybody needs those things. Everybody needs those things, no matter what your level of income is. And so people are focused on that. But then you have to ask yourself, well, why did we have those increases in prices? And there are a number of reasons, but the primary reason is the government spent way too much money, and there was an increasing supply and demand imbalance, and as a result of that, we had inflation. So if we don't end up getting our finances in order, if we don't end up controlling spending, if we don't end up, getting our debt to reasonable levels of debt to GDP, so that our fastest growing expenses, not interest, which you get nothing for, okay, then things are going to get worse. They're going to get much worse over time rather than better. So people logically look at how's it going to affect me, and they also tend to look at, well, today. I mean, today, this week, next week, whatever. So you have to be able to help them understand some of our irresponsibility caused the problem you're concerned about today. And if we don't end up taking steps to be able to deal with the underlying problem, it's going to get much worse in the future.
Alonzo brought up an interesting point in the comments and everything. And I'd love to hear folks' thoughts about that because I kind of agree with him because he brought up that a large portion of Black Americans or African Americans prefer the gig economy. I would argue to some degree that is because a lot of the African American community, and I'm a member of that community, are in service-based jobs. And so the gig economy is almost needed to make ends meet. And that's why I think you find a number of African American drivers in Uber and Grubhub and a number of those kinds of services because they are trying to supplement a already struggling economy and everything. So that's my thought on that, but I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on that as well.
Well, that makes sense. If you've, Black people, unfortunately, historically have faced crappier job opportunities on average. So, when you're used to crappy jobs, the new tech-based crappy jobs look better in comparison.
To answer the question about the Federal Reserve, which is in the chat, the president should not have a role with regard to the ongoing activities of the Federal Reserve as it relates to setting interest rates, for example. However, the Congress and the president need to work together to reform the Federal Reserve to be able to get it to focus on economic growth and stable prices to get them out of the unemployment business. They can't do much about that. They can't help promote economic growth. They must take steps to promote stable prices, but get them out of something that they can't really do much about and limit their ability to engage in self-dealing in our own debt. So
David, can you talk for a second about fashions in economic theory? It seems like under Reagan, everybody believed in trickle down. And under the first part of this century, everybody started believing that monopolies aren't necessarily bad. Can you get people out of bad fashions in economic thinking?
Well, I personally think that competition is good, and competition is one of the things that's made America great. And then, that's why you have antitrust laws. But, that's a facts and circumstances to whether or not a particular company has dominated a market to such an extent that it's anti-competitive, if you will. That's facts and circumstances. I think, I think one of the real things that we have to think about is what are the founding principles of the country? And I would respectfully suggest that there are a number. For example, limited but effective federal government, individual liberty and opportunity, personal responsibility and accountability, rule of law and equal justice under the law, fiscal responsibility, intergenerational equity, and stewardship. Those are founding principles that made us great and that are timeless in nature. And then let's compare that to social state principles. Grow government, increase dependency on government, take control of healthcare, take control of education. Don't worry about deficits and debt. That's how stark our choices are. That's how stark our choices are. And my view is that the real battle for America's future is not as much about Democrat versus Republican. For the record, I'm an independent. And by the way, now about half of the American voting population are independents for good reason. I think the real battle for America's future is philosophical. Who are we? What do we want to be today and in the future?
Hey, David, speaking of philosophical, there's something else that's going on that I've been noticing. I noticed it somewhat with the Olympics, but I've noticed it in general because, as you know, I'm in the event and entertainment space, not just here on Pod TV, but in my other jobs as well as being in the education space. And I'm seeing a lot of people that don't, because even Sasha talks about it in his investment show, don't necessarily understand that whole notion of doing investments that are fun investments and all along those lines, because you're seeing a lot of people that are going to concerts that probably can't afford the concerts, that are going to plays that probably can't afford the plays, and doing things along those lines, probably even going to sporting games that they can't necessarily afford. Because every time that I look at the stands, including some of these major concerts, they are full to the max, and there are a lot of Gen Zs and others that are spending that money. So I just wondered your take on that, because I'm thinking there's some people that are probably being fiscally irresponsible, if we're being perfectly honest, and everything, when they are spending money that they don't have and everything, but they want to enjoy the freedom of being out in the world now that COVID has been lifted and everything.
Two things. One, too much of our current economic growth is based upon debt-financed government spending and debt financed private consumption. That's a fact. That is not sustainable. And secondly, I know Kim's evidently not still on, but for the record, I just want her to know that I know what a budget is. And for many years, I had a budget and I complied with the budget, in particular in the years that I was in government. Because the first time I went into government, I took a 75% pay cut to go into government. And the second time I went into government, I took an 85% pay cut to go into the government. And even though I've given over 20 years of my life to the government, I've spent more time in the private sector than the public, I don't get a single dime of pension or retiree health care from the federal government. So for the record, I'm part of the solution, not part of the problem. So, by the way, David, and even though I don't need a budget now, I do short-term and long-term planning, including tax considerations, including, what I want to happen with anything I have left over. How much of it is, for charity, how much of it is for family, et cetera. Right.
So regardless of who gets elected, can you get into the White House? Can you get meetings there to make the case for what you're saying?
It's right behind me. All I got.
I see that. But can you get over the fence?
All I got. Oh, I've been there. Look, yes, I've been to the White House. Look, what I'm trying to do, quite candidly, is I'm trying to get the candidates to focus on some of the things that we talked about earlier. We got a problem. It's growing. We need to do something about it. I don't expect you to get in all the details about what you're going to do, about how you're going to reform Social Security, how you're going to reform tax system, how you're going to end up reducing other discretionary spending. I don't want to get you in the details. I understand you can't do that. But you have to first publicly acknowledge there's a problem, and you have to support mechanisms that will get us to where we need to be. And I am happy to work with anybody, no matter what their political party is, who wants to do something productive in this regard.
So you're helping set up the third-party candidates debate. Are you going to make this discussion a big part of that debate?
The answer is absolutely yes. I mean, just so you know, there's a group called Free and Equal. They have sponsored several presidential debates. The major candidates haven't accepted, but the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, the Constitution Party, etc. We're trying to get RFK Jr. to agree to participate. It's going to be on September 18th in Los Angeles. Exact location to be determined. I'm going to be a co-moderator. We've already started talking about the questions, and I can assure you there will be questions on the issues that we're talking about. Oh, by the way, and there will be follow-up if necessary because somebody didn't answer the question.
David, this is Steve Wow. Just a quick insight. Thank you so much, as always, for this. I mean, what is it going to take to change the narrative? I mean, it seems like most Americans today just assume that everything is usual, right? We can print our way out of this problem. One thing Fareed Zakaria mentioned yesterday, which I thought was interesting, is that the Harris campaign is getting a lot of momentum, but unlike Hillary Clinton's campaign, there's not a lot of specifics. It's really an emotional campaign, one that seems to be working. But sooner or later, she's going to have to get down to specifics about the economy and things like that. Depending on how much of a bump she gets. Do you hope that the presidential candidates will get down to some specifics on the economy, on foreign policy, on things like that, and how much of a detriment do you think that is to the vice president as we get down to the final win? Because I know the media is anointing her that she's already won, but I think there's a lot of time left between now and November.
Well, first, I think that she clearly has gotten off to a very fast start. And I think the two reasons that she's gotten off to a fast start, well, three reasons. Number one, people are relieved it's not Biden. All right? They're relieved it's not Biden. Number two, a lot of people hate Trump. Forget about policies. They just hate Trump, right? So Biden's gone. Trump's still there. And some people say, well, she could be our first female president, and she's multicultural, diverse background, if you will. but she hasn't had to talk about policy specifics yet. And so I don't think you're really going to know how Kamala Harris is going to fare until after the debates, because so far she's just talked about generalities, and she hasn't been able to have to respond to tough questions with regard to what are you going to do. She hasn't been able to have to respond to, well, you've already done a 180 on several things that you said that you were for. Now you're not for them. Why not? And what caused you to change? She hasn't had to defend herself with regard to the situation on the border. And so I think that she's in a honeymoon period that will last at least through up until the first debate. And I hope we have more than one, because the American people deserve more than one debate. And the VPs need to debate too, although they're not going to determine who's going to win this. Keep in mind, the only thing that matters is the Electoral College. The popular vote doesn't matter. And right now, Trump still has a lead on the Electoral College, although it's not what it was when Biden was the candidate. It's clearly a very competitive race. My personal view, and this is not necessarily my preference, I'm just going to tell you my personal view. My personal view is if the election is ultimately decided based upon the difference in policies, Trump will win. If, on the other hand, the election is decided based upon the differences in personalities, Trump may lose.
Yeah. Great analysis. You got to join the team on CNN, David. Better than what we got out there now.
I used to be on there fairly regularly, and but I don't. That was when I lived up in the New York area, so it was easy for me to get down there. Yeah.
Here's what I want to add with one thing is that I don't remember if it was Nikki Haley or Tulsi Gabbard, one of them. They mentioned something about making a Social Security reform, and they talked about extending Social Security, the full retirement age to age 70. And there's all this uproar about that. And I don't think the American public really understands Social Security at all. Because when you claim Social Security is a different decision than actually retire to retire from whatever you're doing.
Right.
And so there needs to be far more clarity with the American public. And I can't trust that they all understand the intricacies of what's already there. You can make all these broad-based things, but if they don't understand them and don't understand how the program currently works and what the real choices are, I'm not sure they're going to understand any type of reform that could be proposed and understand what is really being discussed.
David, that's why you need citizen education and engagement. Okay, absolutely critical. Let me tell you what 77% of representative groups of voters supported for Social Security reform. Okay, number one, double the taxable wage-based cap. So you're taxing earnings at a much higher level, but you're not eliminating the cap because the tax rate is much, much higher. Okay. Secondly, increase the replacement ratio of the benefit for people near the poverty level, reduce it for upper middle income and upper income, but don't turn it into a welfare program. In other words, don't fully means test it, if you will. All right. So make it more of an anti-poverty program, if you will, but not fully. Thirdly, gradually increase the normal retirement age, but not the early retirement age, another couple of years over a couple of decades. All right. Fourthly, look at the cost of living index to make it more reflective of cost of living for seniors rather than the total population, because it's very different. Okay. And fifthly, add a supplemental individual account savings on top of a solvent, sustainable, secure, defined benefit system for people who don't otherwise have an employer-sponsored program. So those are the kinds of things that people supported in a way that would make it solvent, sustainable, secure, indefinitely. Base defined benefit, supplemental savings if you don't otherwise have a vehicle that you can use. And you're right, most people don't understand how it works, and most people don't think about how our economy has changed. We're not in the industrial age anymore. Most people today are working in jobs that are really more intellectually oriented than they are manual labor.
David,
And
I know
we're
we're
looking
running down.
forward to the debate on, I guess it's September 18th, David, when they're actually going to show that there's more than just two parties in the United States, because the two-party system looks like it has failed us big time. But with that, we're out of time. Speaking of time, I want to thank our panelists in the United States from around the world. Also, the Honorable David M. Walker, former Comptroller General of the United States, and Bill Danko, the author of The Millionaire Next Door. And we'll see you next time on Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
So, y'all, I am about to end this. I just wanted to show y'all, black men, these are the conversations that we need to be having.
Welcome back to New Rockstars.
So,
I'm Eric
white
Voss.
bad,
And now that
work in
Robert Downey
progress,
Jr. is
every day
coming
and
back
see
to the
success.
MCU as
Salute.
villain Dr. Doom in the 5th Avengers film, retitled